The acrylic is a different flow, totally different flow. The science about it is part of the flow. It becomes a different thing. And the timing, it's when I finish a session with acrylic, it's exhausting because the results are so interesting and I can't get those effects any other way. I've trained myself to be okay with it. But basically, I found that there's ways to slow down the process, and then there's times where I need to do it fast. I can't answer the phone. I can't do anything. I have to have everything set. So when I'm doing, it depends on if I'm doing a pour or a sanding or whatever. Lately I've wanted to get into that flow. So I'm using the open acrylic paints. It's lovely. I missed it. I have not painted like that I can't remember, but the last week I've been painting like that. And what I do is I take the open acrylic paints are very unique. There's nothing else like them because they dry from the inside out. So a lump of paint, when it dries from the inside out, it stays wet and malleable for a very long time. So what I did is I got a Masterson water, I guess a palette, closed palette. It has a lid. It's white plastic. I think it came with sponge and I threw that out. I take my open acrylic paints, and you don't need that many, 2 reds, 2 yellows, 2 blues, black and white. I mean, it's nice to have more, but that's all you really need to start to see if you like them. I squeeze them out in this palette. Now I don't use that to mix. I put that on the side, and I have my main mixing palette, which is big. There's a gel and an open acrylic medium that come with it. I squeeze those out, and then I make mixtures and I paint and I have a great old time. It can last, the mixtures are dry quicker than the lumps of paint, maybe an hour. I have like an hour. Then at the end of the hour, I scrape that palette off and my colors are still wet in the main palette. Once I finish at the end of the day, I just do a light spray of water. I close the palette. 4 days. They've been wet for 4 days. And in a funny way, it's like oil paint, because when I paint with oil paint, some of the colors dry faster because they have a different pigment load, like I think it's raw umber will dry quicker, right, than say the titanium white. Yeah. So, and I'm always replacing oil paints too, but it's almost the same. It feels very similar to me, except that I can still use the acrylic. You have to wait 2 weeks after you finish using them to do other things like an isolation coat and a varnish or but then it's non-toxic. I can make transparencies without using the, the strong smelling varnishes with oil paint. So I think the open are really a good way. So what I've been doing is alternating. Like when I work with my usual paintings, like the ocean ones, they are layers and layers. I work flat. I work into the wet medium. I mean, you could get it. I get into a flow, like they're like 10, 15-minute flow sections. And then I stop, I clean up, I decide on the next thing I'm going to do. I make that setup. So it's very different than oil painting where you have the same setup. You can get into the flow for hours. So I'm doing both now because I like that flow where I can just go and I don't have to worry about time so much. With the regular acrylics, it is very important to plan ahead. And you know what though? In the working with the regular acrylic, the reason I can do it is and be okay and still find a flow, because that we do have to find that, is having the left brain say, let's do a wash. Let's get out the fluids. We need to do this to plan. And it gets involved. And once I have the whole setup, I spend a lot of time with my setup so that, and I'm very calm about the setup. You can get into a flow about setting up, squeezing out paints and all that. And then I go, now you have 15 seconds to get this on before it dries, and then I do this speed up thing. So you kind of get used to that alternating slow with fast. When I need the thick paint, I have lots of small 1-ounce jars with lids. And I take the color. So let's say I get a jar or a tube of the actual paint. I will squeeze it in this little jar. I put acrylic glazing liquid and water in it, stir it up. I swatch the top. And then I close the lid. Now, every time I open it, it stays wet because it's in a glob thick form. It's got the retarder from the acrylic glazing. Now, here's what I do. Let's say I want to do a portrait, which is pretty difficult in acrylic, unless you use the open. I will mix like 10 flesh tones in a jar with a lid and screw the lid back on and swatch the top. I just take my time. I might spend 40 minutes just mixing all these colors, but I don't have to rush because I put the lid on, right? Now when I'm ready to paint, I take a deep breath. The swatched lids show me what it looks like dry. I take the lids, so if you can picture, so here's my palette. I put the ones I put them in an arc. I unscrew the lids. The lids are sitting right there so I can see what the color is. And I use the middle for mixing more sophisticated ones. And they all have the acrylic glazing liquid in. I have quite a nice chunk of time where I can work with that. As soon as I want to take a breather and look at the painting, I put all the lids. I just stick the lids on. I don't have to screw them. I just stick them all on. So that's the way I use the heavy body. So I put maybe 15 to 20% water, 15 to 20% acrylic glazing liquid. Slows it down a lot, and it makes it a much better consistency. But what's great is putting it in these little jars. That's how I work. I never squeeze heavy body paint out on a palette and expect to use it by the time I squeeze out the last color.
Yeah.
But if I put them all in these jars with the lids on it, and then the lids show me what the colors, and then I have not just those colors straight from the tubes or jars, but I have pre-mixed colors. I have like, I could take a picture of, it's right over there. I have a big table and it's all jars with lids. So after I spent a lot of time mixing those colors, now it takes me, like, let's say I want to paint.
But they stayed wet for
a long time. You have to have the screw on, little screw on, and the 1 ounce, because I'm always remixing them. So I have like darks. I go, all right, I have like 4 darks, a warm, a cool, straight black, whatever. And I put them out and I go, oh, I want this one a little warmer. So I add a little red to that, fluid or thick paint, stir it up, a little more acrylic glazing liquid, a little more water. I re-swatch the top right over the other one. And then I have a new color.
Yeah. Okay.
The jars and lids are a really good way to work with the acrylic glazing liquid and water in them. And then those are my colors. So that's my thick paint. That's what I use for my thick paint. And then the fluids I just have in bottles, and I'll just squeeze them out and put them in the plates for washes, or a plate. I'll just load a plate with a little bit of them just to do a little area.